Welcome to Keys to the Future. I'm your host, Gabby Coe. I've enjoyed a successful engineering career and want to inspire you to remain focused on your STEM education and career. Join me as I chat with amazing guests who are shaping the future and sharing their journeys to inspire yours. Ready to unlock your potential? Let's dive in. Our guest today is a seasoned leader with over 35 years of global experience in business operations and technology. She has held C-suite positions in Fortune 50 and mid-cap companies across diverse industries, including pharmaceuticals, finance, telecommunications, transportation, food and beverage, and consumer packaged goods. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from Cornell University and holds an Executive MBA from Columbia University Graduate School of Business. Additionally, she has obtained advanced certifications from esteemed institutions such as Harvard University and Rutgers University. Fluent in 4 languages, she values her close-knit family and serves as board of director for various business and philanthropic organizations. Please meet Juliette Samson, former CIO and head of supply chain of World Finer Foods and GenPro Inc. Juliette, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Gabby. That was very nice. Thank you so much.
I'd love to hear a bit about your journey. What led you to a career in technology and eventually to your role as the CIO of GenPro?
So it's an interesting journey, I would say. And honestly, it was not planned for me to be a CIO or head of supply chain. I took my journey really having a 3 to 5 year incremental plan. And I think it's kind of interesting to take a look at the background that I came from, and we will talk about that a little bit. But overall, my overall interest was always in the sciences, and it was in mathematics. And coming from an Eastern Bloc communist country, you're kind of raised with the thought of you can be a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer. Like those were the things that they were looking for, and that's how you were raised. My family was very much in the sciences. My father and my mother both were physicists. One is more a theoretical physicist and a professor. That was my father, and my mother was a experimental physicist that actually worked in biochemistry here in the United States when we emigrated here. And so obviously I was geared more towards the sciences, but my interest was truly mathematics. And then when I got accepted to Cornell, I had a big conversation with my father. And he basically said, listen, I appreciate that you like mathematics, but in order to get a good job in that field, you have to do a PhD. And frankly, if I'm going to pay the kind of money that Cornell needs, I really want you to finish a more practical degree. So think about that and perhaps look at engineering, which is very math heavy. And then select, what engineering you want to do. And I felt that electrical engineering was closest to math. If you go fast forward, after I graduated, I clearly realized that should I have continued in mathematics, I would have been in n dimensions, highly theoretical, and I was a much more practical person. And so I thought engineering actually was the right choice for me.
Wow, that is amazing. And just like everyone else, when we first start out, we may have a certain idea of what we want to do, but other paths take us to different roles and learning different things that may lead us to even a completely different path than what we thought we were going to do.
I think that is very, very true. And as we go through this session, you will hear more that, the things that, I learned and I was recommended is kind of take one step at a time. Do have a vision, but have an achievable vision, which I thought was really, really important to learn very early in my career. Because to your point, things do happen and you do make changes. And having an achievable ambition drives you to do more. Sometimes if you select a too aggressive ambition, and you don't get there, you may get highly disappointed, and that's not healthy for you. So it's really important to have achievable objectives. And I also felt that it was extremely important to have a plan 3 to 5 years out. not more, 3 to 5, and then kind of see where it's going and relook at your plan and redo it. But it is important to have a plan, because without a plan, kind of like when you buy a house, what's the most important part of a house? Location, location, and location. My view of a career is plan, plan, and plan. It is important to understand yourself, what you like, and where you want to go in the next 3 to 5 years.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the role of the CIO has evolved so much over the years,
Yeah.
moving beyond IT management to driving business strategy now. How
Yeah.
would you describe your role at GenPro, and what does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah. So I would rather describe my role throughout my career, not necessarily my last role, just because my last role, I would say, was relatively in a small company. And as you have mentioned earlier, I have been in Fortune 50 and in mid cap. So the experience I think I would like to talk more about is my experience at World Finer Foods, where I was 8.5 years and I did a major digital transformation. But overall, to answer your question relative to what does my day look like? So when you get into an executive role like CIO or head of supply chain, or even not necessarily an executive role, but a leadership role, a big leadership role, which I have had significant and many in Fortune 50 at Pfizer, at Merrill Lynch, at AT&T. It is really, really important to be connected to your team. You are as strong as your team is. Unless you're in a development role or I wouldn't say lower level, I would just say a different type of a function. If you are in a development role or a highly engineering role, then you need to really understand the bits and bytes, if you will. But if you're in an executive role, being well connected to your team is really important. So, what did my day look like? I would come in right in the morning and very early. So I'm an early starter. And the first thing that I would look at, of course, if the company has it, and this is something that I have introduced in World Final Foods and in GemPro, and that is data driven reports. It was very important, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the CEO, that you need to make decisions based on data. And most companies actually don't have very good reporting. So one of the things that I have worked on very hard is to introduce that. Business intelligence is very important, and that is data driven. So what would I do is very early in the morning, I would look at my action items and I would look at my reports, and I would want to see the state of the business. What did we do yesterday? How many orders did we process? What is our quarterly results look like? What does our week results look like? How are we progressing through the months? I mean, those were key metrics, service levels, key metrics that I was looking at on a daily basis, first thing in the morning. After that, as the people would come into the office, I would have an open door policy. I would walk the floor. I would ask people, how was yesterday? How was your day? What are your issues? Really connect with them and understand what they're doing so that I know all the things that they're doing. What are their difficulties? What issues did they run into? How can we resolve some of those? And also talk to them about what we're trying to get accomplished. Because I found that if you connect your overall strategy and objectives of the company down to the lowest level of your team members, they have a better purpose to do that work. And so I spent a lot of time during the day at different times, depending on my schedule and my meetings, of course, on communicating, being transparent, and really listening to them and making their day easier. So, again, I think that's super important as a leader.
That's fascinating. You mentioned connecting to your people, and a leader is as strong as your team. I really agree with that
Yeah.
view. You also mentioned having everyone know the vision, that common goal is very important as well. So I find that very, very fascinating and very focused time windows to optimize all those connections at all the levels of the organization. I imagine digital transformation, and you alluded to this already, must be a big part of what you do, right? And how do you approach this, especially given the rapid technology changes?
Yeah, so let me also talk a little bit, and I'm just going to go a little bit back just to talk a little bit about the beginning of my career, which I think is really important. So, as I planned my career and I looked 3 to 5 years out, it was really important for me. And this may be different for everyone, but for me, it was very important um, to select a company, an initial company that was very big, where I could basically move around and really understand the business. And for me, that was AT&T. I was 22 years at AT&T, and T, and I spent a lot of time in different roles almost every 3 years. Because it was so big, I was able to move every 3 years to a different role and really understand the business. So I was in the product, I was in manufacturing, I was in research and development, where I was lucky enough to come up with a patent for undersea cable communication, and I was involved in the rollout of the very first wireless systems. It's called CDMA. I had a very global role. I was able to travel the world. And really the message, what I'm trying to say is that it's really important to really do all the functions, I guess, of what you're going to eventually lead. Because you need to understand what people are doing day in and day out. And this goes back to my comment on being connected to the people. And you're much better connected if you have experience in some of those functions. So being on the manufacturing floor, building a manufacturing location of telephones in Brazil, doing data analytics and really evolving that and doing development there, bringing out wireless, understanding mergers and acquisitions, which is what I've done once I left the telecom industry. I went into Merrill Lynch and then into Pfizer. And there I was doing mergers and acquisitions and divestitures, really understanding these huge programs, understanding data centers. How do you consolidate them? How do you take things to the cloud? What are the risks associated with cloud? What are the benefits associated with cloud? What are ERPs? How do you implement ERPs, Oracle, SAP, Microsoft? What are the benefits of those things? These are really, really important to take you to the next and the next and the next level to then become a CIO and then get involved in digital transformation. So going back to your question, Gabby, and I think it was, how do I stay astute with technology and what are the processes, I guess, for digital transformation? So I switched over from Fortune 50, where I think I've learned what are the issues and what's critical for a company. And then I moved into the mid cap, where I was able to apply some of that knowledge. And so the first thing that I do is really understand the IT budget. Where are we spending money? Why are we spending that money? How important is those things that we're spending money on? And how can we do more for less? So every company is always interested in efficiency, and efficiency is time, doing things faster and better, and efficiencies are doing them for less. So, understanding your budget and where you're spending your money and what are the benefits of what you're spending is super important. So, those are the first things that I usually look at when I go into a new role in a mid-size or a smaller company. And then I would start thinking about, okay, so we're spending money here. This is how we're set up. This is the software. This is the ERP. These are the things that we have. This is our goal. We either want to increase our profitability, or we want to increase our revenue, or we want to purchase another company, or we want to divest, or what are our company's objectives? So we need to take a look at that. And what are those company objectives today, in a year, in 3 years? So I would look out maybe 3 to 5, but I would say 3 years. And then I'm trying to adjust our spend and what we do relative to where we want to go. And then obviously technology is moving extremely fast, and you definitely have to stay on top of that. And that is a challenge. So again, what's important to stay ahead of the game? It is super important to have a network and talk to your other CIO friends. So as you go up the chain and as you go to different industries or different roles or even within the same industry, you make networks and you make connections. It is super important to stay in touch with them. So, for example, I have a little text group on my cell phone where if I want to do something, I sent a note to my CIO friends, and these are people that I work with that all became CIOs in different industries, in pharma, in logistics, and we're all friends because we all actually came from Pfizer. So I kind of built a little network. But you can build a network anywhere. And so we basically text each other every so often to say, hey, I've implemented an AI solution and is doing X, Y, and Z. Do you have another vendor? Have you done this? How have you done it? So that's one way. Another way is to obviously go to summits. So Gartner is a really good organization, but Gartner is usually for Fortune 50 companies and it's expensive. Evanta is a subset of Gartner. And so I have then learned to participate with Evanta and not just attend, but also be a speaker, run discussion groups, and really contribute. And then obviously you read things, obviously, you should have connections to certain articles, to certain descriptions. So I think those are the ways where you stay connected. Obviously, LinkedIn is a great place where you can also network and find out things. And so really you have to utilize all of your capabilities when you want to get something done or just hear about the latest and the greatest. But again, the point that I want to make is not only do you get from others and organizations, but you also have to give. And giving means writing a white paper or speaking or doing a podcast the way I'm doing right now, Gabby, so that I can empower and help others. So all of these things are really important. And lately, I have been involved very much, and I can talk about it a little bit later, but I've left my operational role and I have become a board director. And so now I view things from a very different perspective, asking all the right questions and making sure that companies are doing the things that they should be doing. And now I stay in touch again with technology through the same methods, but more with board chairs, board directors, CEOs, and understanding what's important for companies.
You mentioned two key things that I picked up on were networking, and I think that is important at all levels of the organization and at all levels of leadership roles that you may have. And not only just learning from how others are applying the technology, which I think it's very important because it provides you different viewpoints. But you also mentioned staying abreast of the latest technology through continuous learning and also giving back to the industry or in sharing your ideas and how you're implementing different things. I think that's fascinating.
Of course, I didn't mention, training, which is extremely important as well. And one of the things as a CIO and as a leader, even when I wasn't a CIO, highly encourage people to go for training, right? And oftentimes, so just as an example, in my latest role, there was very little allowance of people to go to summits. And when I came there, I actually took my directors to a lot of different events so that they could learn, because I think that that is super important. It is not okay to be in a small company and just surround yourself with your own people. It's not enough. And as a leader and as a CEO and as an owner of a company, it is super important to allow your people. And there's tons of free events, or maybe you just pay for them to go into New York, or maybe you pay for them to make a flight. So it's $200 or $300, not a big deal. But it is important for them to be connected with their vendors, their key vendors. This training or this informal training is super, super important to stay on top. And that's what's going to take you to the next frontier. Otherwise, you're going to stay behind. Market changes and technology changes are it's like a treadmill. It continuously changes. So unless you allow your executives, your leaders, your senior managers to get this kind of training and this kind of networking, you're going to stay behind. This is very important, and it's a big advice to owners and CEOs.
Absolutely. I think, training in the awareness, right, of the technologies as they are evolving is very important because change is very difficult for everyone. If we don't learn about the technology or how to use it or how it will impact our workday, right, then we're less willing to change our current methods. So speaking about change, what are some of the biggest transformation challenges that you face through transforming your organizations? How have you approached that?
So, culture change is one of the hardest, of course. But again, if you keep people connected to the goal of the company, and if you train and if you explain that technology is shifting your work, not taking your work away. I think that that's you gain respect, you gain trust, and this is really important. So for people to trust you is super important. The other thing that, a CIO, what keeps me up at night, obviously, is security of our systems and our data. That is a huge, huge pressure, I think. And one of the things that is really important relative to that is to train your people, make sure they understand how to their emails and what to click on and what not to click on. So formal training of that, in-house formal training, and running examples when they don't know if it's real or not, and really measuring how good they are, super important. And then obviously always looking at the newest software, monitoring your security, understanding your failovers, your risk mitigation process, making sure that you test them, not just have them, because having a 20-page document or 80-page document is not going to help you when you have crisis. So you have to
Mhm.
actually go through a failover risk mitigation process and test it out. Those things should be done yearly. So those are the kinds of things that I think you need to put in place. But security and data security is extremely important and sort of keeps all the time. I think about it every day. And then obviously right sizing the company is also very important, depending on your growth, depending on market conditions. You want to make sure that you do the right thing for the company. So I would say those are the biggest challenges. In order to gain the trust of people, you cannot tell them to do something and you don't do that. So it's really, really important for them to see, how do you manage. So if they see that you walk the floor and you talk to them and you're interested in not just necessarily their work, which is primary, but also personally, sometimes it's nice to know and just say hello and are you and how are you feeling today. You should do to others what you want others to do to you. So that's what I mean by walk the talk. So if you say you're going to do something, do it. If you ask others to do something for you, make sure you do the same for them. This is really, really important. And it's just basic leadership. To me, it's basic leadership 101. Not everybody follows it, of course, but those that do gain the trust of the organization. And typically, when they leave a company, people follow them. So I find it extremely important.
Yeah, I think those are really good points that you mentioned, trust and walk the talk. I really love that you said that, because we need to lead by example if we want people and organizations to change and to come along with the evolution of the technology and the evolution of how we're doing our jobs and so on. Earlier you talked about AI a little bit, and that's going to, or it's already revolutionizing the way we do things or the way we're thinking about doing things. So, but what about opportunities? What are some of the trends in technology that excite you the most about the future?
So, it's very interesting. AI and Gen AI is extremely big right now and everybody's talking about it. I would say that that's a key conversation. I'll talk more about it, but I think there's also other things going on which is sort of even more progressive, and that's Bitcoin and quantum computing. You don't hear about it all that much right now, Gabby, but you will. Quantum computing is going to come into play in so many different ways, but one way that I'm thinking about in my latest conversations with others like me is that quantum computing can actually decipher your passwords. And so it goes back to your security. So, what are we going to do from a security perspective? How are we going to secure our passwords if they can be decoded with quantum computing? Do you do multi-factor? How many, not just two-factor authentication, but multi-factor authentication? How do you do those things? But going back to AI, I just wanted to put that out there for thinking. But going back to AI and Gen AI, so a lot of people are very happy and very nervous. So very progressive people, and I would call myself pretty progressive, are very excited about it because it is just unbelievable what it does. If anybody has used Chat GPT and has used it for some time, because it learns and it truly does learn. So at the beginning, it kind of gives you general comments, but then if you ask questions of it and you give more of yourself, it will actually answer very much like you would, and much more eloquently. So it's just unbelievable. But I really do think that it's going to revolutionize many things. It's going to allow us to do much more for much less. So I work with a very innovative Gen AI custom development organization called DeFi. They have significantly grown in the last 4 years. They're basically led by two young men. And they're highly innovative and very cost effective. They have been able to save companies 85% of their costs in certain areas. And we're kind of looking at expanding those. And so we're going to be able to do much more for a lot less. Now, what does that mean to our workforce? It doesn't mean that the workforce goes away. It means that the workforce will shift from medial tasks to higher level tasks, right? So machines can only, or automation can only think for you relative to what you give it, right? So the more innovation you give it, the more innovative it's going to be. So it's really very important to understand that people's jobs will not go away, but they will shift. And also more importantly, it's going to give you a better work-life balance. Like if a bot, which is short for robot, can do certain medial work for you, why not have them do it and save yourself time? It doesn't mean that you won't do that work, or you don't have to oversee it or make sure that it happens the right way, but you're not going to be doing, reading an 80-page contract. You can ask a bot to tell you in 2 pages the top and the most important pieces of that contract that you have to focus on, for example, right? And then I believe that AI is going to be able to really help us in personally and in the industry, in the healthcare industry. I mean, in all the industries, but I'm just thinking healthcare, just because I'm passionate about healthcare. But it can do a lot of predictive analytics of your disease. It can probably tell you, or eventually will be able to tell you, will that cancer reoccur? When will that cancer reoccur? So that you could proactively prevent it. And not just cancer, but any disease. So predictive analytics is very interesting. It's also very interested in the supply chain. It's very interesting in almost any industry. Now, of course, it can only predict based on history and maybe some metrics, like will AI ever predict COVID? No. Will it ever predict the CrowdStrike issue? No. But it will be able to predict things that we don't know today, in healthcare, in supply chain, in other areas. So I definitely think that there's huge opportunity for AI and Gen AI. Obviously, we have to be very conscious on how we use them. And it's like any other new technology. When the internet came about, people were very afraid on how the internet is going to be used. And, there are definitely negative aspects of that. And there will be negative aspects of AI as well, which is why us as leaders have to be very cognizant and review and look at the results and not just take the results like a God spell. It's not. You have to use your intelligence and take a look at it and make sure it makes sense. And then the other thing that I would just caution is the data integrity is extremely critical, because if you put in poor data, then your AI predictive results are going to be totally off. So these are very important things to think about.
It's a fascinating world. But I'm going to switch a little bit
Yeah.
from the technology to a little bit more personal here. You immigrated to America from Romania, and as you mentioned a little bit earlier, at an early age. Did you always know you wanted to pursue a career in STEM? And were there any major cultural or educational differences that stood out to you, especially regarding gender and STEM fields?
So first of all, I just wanted to say that a book is coming out in the spring or summer of next year, which is Empowering Women in STEM. And I will have one chapter in that book about my career and my life, and it's going to address this question. But I did always know I'm going to be in the sciences because I liked the sciences. And I was, as I told you earlier, I was the child of two scientists. So I grew up in this environment. But I did not expect, and I did not know how being a woman is going to be in United States. So in Romania, women were doctors and lawyers and engineers and physicists, and I never saw a difference. My mother and my father, like I said, were physicists both. And so for me, that was so natural. But when I came, and I was one of very few female engineering graduates in my graduating class of 500, many years ago. I'm not going to say how many years ago at Cornell. It was kind of shocking to see that women didn't choose this as a profession. So I think it's really important to do this podcast. I think it's important to write books. I think it's important to mentor young people, women, and I would say men, and encourage them to go into the sciences because it's a very fascinating field. I had some very interesting experiences. Obviously, I started out in manufacturing at AT&T in Reading, Pennsylvania, and I had a very nice gentleman who asked me on the manufacturing floor, Juliette, I don't understand, like, why are you doing this? Like, you're a woman. Don't you want to have any children? And I said, sure, I want to have children. And he's like, well, then why are you doing this? And I just said to him, it's interesting you would ask me that question, but I would change the dynamic and ask you, why are you doing this? And he said, well, I really like it, he said. And he must have been like, I was probably like 21 or 22 when he was, I don't know, 50. Maybe he was 40. I don't know at that time, the age difference. But he
Right.
said, Juliet, I really, really like it. And I said, well, guess what? I really like it too. And I said to him, do you have children? He said, yeah, I do. I said, okay, so how were you able to manage doing this and having children? And he was like, well, I'm not a woman. And I said, well, I understand, but that doesn't matter in the sense that I also like to do this and I will get married and have children. Yes, I can do both. And that was the end of the conversation. And he kind of thought about it like, oh, shoot, she likes this. And I'm like, yeah, I do. So yeah, it's sort of interesting. I think the gender gap is definitely closing. What I found, which was also very shocking, is the difference in the salary between
Mm.
a female in a position and a male in the same position. But again, today that's closing because the data is more readily available with Glassdoor, with conversations. So, today it's okay to ask your manager for a raise and talk about your performance and what you bring and how much you save, and therefore they should pay you accordingly. So I think things have definitely improved and changed over the years, which I'm really, really happy to see. And I still think that there's more to go, obviously, but I think people are starting to realize that your customers are very diverse. And I just don't mean sexual diversity. I mean just thought diversity. And we're very global now. We're connected. So how can you not have leadership that's the same profile as your customers? So leaders, board directors, CEOs, they're realizing this. There's a value to having a diverse workforce. And that means even female owned companies should have a diverse employee. So it's true on both ends, right? I don't
Yeah.
think that having an organization that's very one-sided and very cohesive in that way is going to be very successful. So that's what I would say.
Absolutely. I definitely agree that in teams, it's proven that diverse teams outperform any other teams. Juliet, you've accomplished so much in your career. For those listening who aspire to be technology leaders, what advice would you offer them?
I would just say a couple of things. As I mentioned, always have a plan and always look ahead, never behind. You will have good experiences, you will have bad experiences. That glass always has to be half full and always look ahead. Very important. I talked about this, take one step at a time, have achievable goals. One thing that I've experienced is I never said no and I cannot do something. So when I was offered an opportunity that I was scared to take because I had no experience in it, I kind of jumped in it. Yes, I was scared. Did I show it? No, I tried not to show it. But I jumped in it, and guess what? I managed to do very well. So, an advice that I want to give people is nothing is too small, nothing is too big. Um, and never say I cannot do something, because try it. You can. You absolutely can. And then also keep in mind you have difficulties in your life. You get married, you can get sick, your children can get sick. I don't know about you, Gabby, but I know I was a sandwich generation where I had to take care of my children and also my elderly parents. There's a lot of challenges in life. And you could say, why me? Why did this happen to me? And really just be on the negative side. Or you could say, these difficulties are empowering me. They're helping me find ways to do things differently and make you more resilient and make you more successful. And that's definitely been my experience in raising children, which I feel for me was harder than anything in my career, frankly. While there are many books out there, but there's no books that are very specific to you. Everybody has their own life and their own journey. And I would just say, look at these difficulties as a way of resilience and success and never ever give up. I would just leave that thought of never giving up because that will take you to places that you don't think you will ever get to.
That's such valuable advice. Passion and adaptability are key, I think, as well. What are some key qualities or traits that have helped you in your career, particularly in challenging moments? How would you encourage others to cultivate those same traits?
You just have to look at the glass half full. There will be days when you don't want to get up, and that's okay. We all have them. Don't think that you're unique, you're not, but do get up. And the next day just go for it and insist and just manage your own mind. So I think managing your mind is important, and you have to understand that everything is driven from your mind. And so being conscious of that and telling yourself, I got to do this. Let me think about it. How can I do it differently? Oftentimes I have ideas in the shower. I have ideas when I go to sleep. I even dream about something. It's important to manage your mind in a positive go forward mode. And that's a trait, I guess. If you tell yourself something more often, you will believe it. And you have to tell yourself, yes, I can. And guess what? Yes, you can. And you will believe it. It's very interesting. And it really comes with experience and time. It's not something that young people necessarily do. Sometimes they do. Sometimes it's inherent to you. Sometimes you learn it. But you have to tell yourself, yes, I can. I'll get out of this situation, or I will improve this situation, or just a go forward mindset.
Absolutely. So before we wrap up, what's next for you? I'm really curious. Are there any exciting projects in the horizon for you?
Yeah, so I have now kind of shifted my career into board work. I'm looking for one or two more board assignments. I'm on two boards right now. One is a nonprofit, it's the National Kidney Foundation, and the other one is a software as a service board, which was a startup, and we just went public on OTC, and we're filing right now our last SEC documents. So it's very exciting. But I am looking for one or two more board assignments or board director roles in the mid-cap market, either in healthcare or in CPG, food and beverage. So that's really where my focus is now going forward. Other projects, I'm looking to give back and doing podcasts and doing speaking engagements. Not for money, just really giving back and participating more to be present and for people to hear me and hopefully think that I am energizing and I can bring value to a board. And what else? I think I want to travel. So that's another activity which I have been doing, but I'm going to do more of. See the world more, not on a business trip, but on a pleasure trip. As far as board work is concerned, I can fill a lot of gaps in the audit and risk committee on the cybersecurity and AI place. I just got accepted to the NASDAQ Board of Excellence group, and I also just got listed in the Goldman Sachs board database as well as JP Morgan. So very exciting times coming, and hopefully I can help companies grow to their next frontier.
How exciting. I wish you the best
Thank
in
you.
your new endeavors. And thank you so much, Juliette, for sharing your journey and insights with us. I know our listeners have taken away so much from this conversation.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Gabby. This has been a true pleasure. And please let me know if I can help in any other way.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. Don't forget to follow Keys to the Future on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast for more inspiring stories and industry insights. Until then, keep innovating and stay curious.